Welcome to Drama by Design, Acting Fundamentals, the layering of states. This topic is more relevant to characterization. There are permanent characteristics and more temporary states. Let's start with the permanent characteristics first. Starting with the physical, a big influence on our physical characteristics is the character's age. This will affect their posture and their speed of movement. If they're very young, they might be quite upright and sprightly. If they're older, they might be a little stooped and slower in their movement, and their coordination may not be very sharp, particularly if they're very old. If the character has any disability such as paraplegia or palsy or even blindness, then we really need to spend a lot of time doing every activity possible with this disability. If it's something a little bit minor, if it's an injury such as a limp or a stroke that may have affected their movement, then we need to work on that specific injury, practice walking with that limp, walking with crutches, or having one side of the body affected by the stroke. We really need to make that look natural. Another permanent characteristic is their speech. If the character has an accent that's not our natural accent, if you're well-spoken and the character is less well-spoken, if the character has an accent because English is their second language or because they're American or British, then we really have to practice that thoroughly. Sometimes the character will speak at a different pitch, maybe higher or lower. If it's lower, we'll probably need to do a lot of breathing exercises to bring the voice down. If it's higher, we can think of just using the upper chest to raise the pitch. The rhythm may be completely different to ours. Maybe they have a very playful rhythm. Maybe they aren't very fluent and they stop and start when they speak. Maybe they even have a stutter or affectations such as a lisp. We'll need to practice that. Another permanent layer could be the character's psychological characteristics. Their status could affect lots of things. It could be physical, it could be spoken, it could be just their attitude. If they think they are very important, they're going to behave differently to someone who thinks they're not very important. A king will have a presence that's different to a pauper. So you can take on a physical characteristic that then affects your psychological mindset. You could stoop. You could grovel if your character is of low status, or you could just hold your head up high and look down upon people. With physical gesture, create your psychological characteristics. Each individual character can have different attitudes. They might be a friendly, personable character, or they may be angry, violent. They might be timid and shy. When you think about these sorts of psychological characteristics, that can affect the way they stand. But if it's coming from an internal point of view, the effect on our body language will be much more natural. Again, you can use physical gestures to influence your psychological gesture, but ultimately this aspect is about how does the character think, and that could be conscious or subconscious. Just moving on to temporary states. These we should layer on after the more permanent states, because they're temporary, and it could be just how the character's feeling that day. So with tiredness, it's important to think about the time of day. If it's early in the day, you might be fresher. If it's later, you might be tireder. You might be more frustrated given what's happened during the day. So ask yourself, how tired are you? Even if it's early, the character might still be very tired if they've spent the whole night awake. Another temporary state is drunkenness. And inebriation affects people in different ways. Some people become less inhibited and they take more risks. They could be more sexual. They could be more aggressive. Sometimes their speech is affected as well as their movement. And if you are using the drunkenness state, when you're practicing your movements and your speech, it's better to try to say words more accurately or spend more time on your movements trying to move rather than playing drunk. It tends to produce a much better, more natural effect. If you are trying to walk through the doorway or you're trying to articulate what it is you wanted to say, your natural actor instincts kick in and inhibit you doing that, but you're trying to say something in an impeded way, give the impression that you are inebriated. If you're breathless, there's a reason for it. You're either at altitude and you're having difficulty breathing, in which case taking shallower breaths can help to give the impression of breathlessness. If you're breathless because you've been exercising, then the best thing to do is to do that exercise. If you've been running upstairs, run up those stairs or run on the spot furiously to give yourself a natural feeling of breathlessness. If you've been underwater holding your breath for a while, then just hold your breath for a long time and then that will create you to be gasping. You might have to negotiate this with the director or cameraman so that you are at that point at the time they call action. Emotion can create a temporary state for the character. If you've been shocked by some devastating incident, this affects your ability to take in what's going on around you. You might be slower, you may not respond to what people are saying to you. If you're angry, then this will affect your breath and your body language. If you're fearful and nervous, you become wary of your surrounds and you might have shorter movements. You might be tense. So just to conclude, with the permanent layers, there can be an overlap between your physicality and your speech and your psychological mindset. For example, your status will affect your physicality, your speech, and the way you think. Make sure you layer the more permanent states on first, then the temporary ones. And make sure you do this layering before the scene starts. I hope this was helpful. See ya.